everyone, we're here at our annual audit conference in Madrid, and I'm absolutely delighted to welcome Julia Penny, outgoing president of the ICAW, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. It's an absolute pleasure to have Julia, especially because she worked with us on the ISQM implementation last year and the year before on the first phase, and this year she will be doing another piece of work with us on the root cause analysis, which for us is the second phase. Julia, so thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Well, maybe already let's start by having a little recap of the phase one. What is the kind of feedback you are having from auditors on the implementation phase? What kind of obstacles have they faced? What solutions are they envisaging? Did they find it hard, easy? How did the implementation go?
I think, the implementation is hard. There's a lot of new stuff in ISQM, one, the quality management standard, however it's implemented in their local jurisdiction. And particularly smaller firms who typically have started their whole process a little bit later in the journey have found it a struggle, especially combined with the fact that we've got so many staff shortages across the accounting profession worldwide, really. So we've had that squeeze in terms of finding the time. Now, what has happened when we've got tools in place, when we've got a starting point that firms can use to say, okay, right, I'm a firm a bit like this, so I can start with something, which is what, of course, we did with the tools of the network to say, okay, you're a little bit like this, start with this, use this as something, as a building block to take everything forward. That does make it a lot easier, because then you're not with a blank piece of paper, you get a blank piece of paper and you're like, what do I put on it? What are my risks? How do I mitigate them? And you really don't know where to start. So that makes an enormous difference. And then as we go up with the bigger firms, some of them did start planning everything a lot earlier, so they had a lot longer, but of course they're more complex, so they got more to get in it. And I think the bigger firms were talking yesterday with some of the people over dinner, and they were saying really, really valued the tool, the software tool, allowing not just, yes, here's some sample risks for this type of firm, and here are the mitigations that you might put in place, the responses that you might have, but actually having it in a way that you can track it, have a way where you can link the different risks to the different responses, because of course a response may mitigate a whole load of risks. So really, really valuing that software solution, particularly as the firms get more complex and bigger. So lots of challenges. It's still bedding down in a lot of places. It's a big step to get the first step done, but I think that is now sinking in, and firms are getting used to it.
So what we've also seen, and I would like to have your view on that, to see whether you've seen this in the profession, especially our Latin American firms, they have really embraced the process. They have really used the whole analysis with the ISQM tool to almost take stock of where they're at in terms of internal quality management. And that was an exercise that they hadn't done before, especially not the smaller firms. And they actually found that it was a very useful exercise, also in terms of making maybe the audit process more efficient, in order to re-evaluate whether what they've been doing for so many years was actually the right thing to do. Is that something you've been seeing?
Yeah, slowly and in certain pockets. I think the potential for that is huge, because at its heart, if you move away from all of the documentation that you require, all of the complex bits and pieces that you have to do to comply with the standard, in essence what it's saying is, look at your business. In this sense, we're talking about the audit business primarily, but actually quality management applies to the whole firm, not just audit. But look at audit, look at your business. What is the major risk to quality? And if you step back, why weren't we doing that already, really? Lots of industries have used, and we're coming on to it in a minute, root cause analysis to look at, why did something go wrong? And they've been using it for decades. And this is relatively new, as we'll talk about tomorrow and in a bit now. And it's really just saying, okay, here's audit. I have to have a quality product, because if I don't, the clients won't come back, and also I will get stung horribly by the regulator. I may have no future career at all. So thinking about what's going to risk me having that quality audit, and what can I do about it? And if you think about it like that, it is so logical, and it's just better business processes that it helps to build.
You're absolutely right in saying that many sectors have done root cause analysis for many, many years. When you think of the airline industry, you think of healthcare, all the sectors where we cannot afford to have things going wrong. So they know exactly what they're doing. Well, now we come to root cause analysis. Root cause analysis has been around for a long time as a term, but I think if we are perfectly honest, we also know that what we think we're doing right is not really what root cause analysis is all about. So if you, obviously we're going to have a session with Julia tomorrow, but in very simple terms, what is different from what we were doing before? What is this really new element in doing root cause analysis, and what do firms have to be careful about?
Okay, I mean, I think what is different is culture. And culture does not change instantly, because for root cause analysis to work, you have to build a culture within the organisation, whatever organisation it is that's doing it, where you don't blame people for getting things wrong. Things will always go wrong, something will go wrong, even if we've anticipated all sorts of risks, we've put all sorts of mitigations. We are human, but computers make mistakes as well. So we need to have a culture where we say, I'm not going to blame an individual or a group of individuals for something going wrong. What I'm going to do is try to understand what it is that allowed that to go wrong. And often they are systemic issues. So the digging down of root cause analysis then has to start from this environment of culture and then say, okay, so what went wrong? And not just say, oh, they didn't do that bit in the audit program correctly, so I'll tell them to do it correctly next time.
Yes.
Amazingly enough, it doesn't really work. If you dig down, well, why didn't you do it correctly? Didn't think it was my job. Why didn't you think it was your job? Well, because it all gets reviewed, doesn't it? So, somebody will review it. And then, you start to dig down. Or you might find, why didn't you do it? I didn't have enough time. Literally, didn't have enough time. I was ill. I didn't feel well, but I came to work because we were... And you unpick and you go down layer and layer and layer and layer until you find, hopefully, the root causes. Might be one, more likely it's going to be a few root causes. And that can really help in the re-engineering. If it's re-engineering, it's probably a bit of an overstatement for what you do, but of the processes, actually, what is it fundamentally? And it might be stuff, it might be you don't manage your clients very well. It might be that you don't tell your clients you've got to wait longer for your audit report if you don't give me the things on time, rather than just squeezing the time period that you've got to do the audit. So it's taking that general, let's look and think, what can we do about that, into a much bigger pool of possibilities, digging much deeper down into that, and having a culture where you don't blame a person, you just try and find solutions.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely, that's a crucial point, because very often I think what we see is that deficiencies are hidden because people are too worried to admit to what's really going on. And then we have these sort of communication gaps that really can lead to very significant deficiencies. And I mean, transparency, communication, really working together as a firm with the right tone at the top is absolutely crucial.
Absolutely. And that's why, and I'll talk about it in a bit more depth tomorrow, when you're doing root cause analysis, often you take the approach of doing interviews with people. And whilst you can do sort of a whole audit team, it almost always works more effectively to have one-on-one, and particularly to separate out senior and junior staff, because the junior staff won't say what they think is really going on in front of the senior staff, and the senior staff won't say what they really think is going on in front of the junior staff, because they are afraid of losing face or of showing that they don't understand something. And if you talk to them individually, and they're not going to be blamed as an individual, then you can actually make some progress, and then you can actually start to understand what's driving the behaviours, or the lack of behaviours that you want, or just simple misunderstanding of the processes that you've put in place.
Very, very true. And as Julia said, we will hear more from her, because we're currently working on the second phase, so the root cause analysis piece, which will also be embedded in the app once again, with the idea being that our member firms can obviously generate reporting that they might want to use internally, also use for regulators. There will also be learning, very likely, maybe some e-learning, definitely some virtual training sessions, the way we did it on the phase 1. So thank you very much, Julia. We look forward to hearing some more detail tomorrow. And once again, thanks so much for being with us in Madrid.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and to be working with HLB.